Alright, we're sitting here backstage doing the recording for our Minecon panel. And yeah, welcome everyone to SciCraft's Minecon panel, how automation can enrich your game experience. We're gonna talk and discuss about how knowing Redstone, game mechanics and just a general scientific approach to the game can provide you with almost infinite content. It makes playing the game way easier and allows you to focus on the parts of the game you like the most rather than just grinding. Automation in Minecraft is a game in itself. From pressing a simple button to open your door to fully automatic mining machines, nearly everything is possible in Minecraft. But enough of all that, let's introduce ourselves and our server first of all, before we go down the rabbit hole. I'm Methods, I will be leading through the panel today, and I like awesome game design.
Hi, my name is Elmango. Like many of us, I'm from Germany. I've been playing Minecraft for 7 years, and I've been making YouTube videos for 5 years now.
I'm Myron. I'm trying to find the limits of what is possible in vanilla survival Minecraft, and I'm an expert for anything having to do with pistons.
Hi, I'm Panic. Like all of us, I play on the SciCraft survival server, and I do also stream from there from time to time.
Hi, I'm Gnembon. I like to design farms and contraptions for vanilla survival and publish them on YouTube. And this is my first Minecon, so I'm excited.
Okay, next we want to introduce our server, and for that we prepared a little highlight video.
The SciCraft server was founded in 2014. It's a vanilla survival invite-only server with currently 39 members from all over the world, focusing on redstone, automation and farming. We work on large-scale projects together as a group, sharing resources and splitting up the work. Most of our members have a technical background, combining science and Minecraft into SciCraft. Minecraft is the perfect platform to share our passion for automation, efficiency and having fun. Starting from humble beginnings, automation was the main factor in being able to complete larger and larger projects. After 5 years of playing the same world, we still have ideas for new projects, farms and goals to achieve. Here are some of the completed highlight projects of the server. A flying machine-based melon and pumpkin harvesting system covering a checkerboard pattern which guarantees the optimal growth rates for the crops. An automatic large spruce tree farm destroying leaves and pushing logs into a TNT blast chamber producing over 90,000 logs per hour. A portal-based guardian farm with separate drop, looting and XP mode able to supply over 10 players with 1000 levels each overnight. Using some unintended game mechanics and zero-tick technology to force grow chorus plants up to sky limit with extra flower mode producing up to 180,000 chorus fruits and 100 chorus flowers per hour. A player-based AFK ice farm combined with Pigman XP farm to auto-repair tools capable of producing up to 72,000 ice per hour. A shifting floor-based mob farm in the middle of a decorated desert city to supply us with bones. Using 5 nether fortress crossroads and over 60 ghasts to transport wither skeletons, blazes and pigmen into a nether portal to harvest their goods in the overworld for up to 22 wither skeleton skulls per minute and over 28,000 coal as well as 65,000 bones and 50,000 blaze rods per hour. 24 slime farms in a perimeter with 1 and 2 player mode, using iron golems and nether portals to transport all slimes to a single collection in the nether, a crafting station connected to a slime block storage with 2 displays telling us about actual fill level and percentage of the storage controlled by a computer in the back. A fast long-distance travel system using TNT and ender pearls. The player throws an ender pearl into the air, which gets perfectly aligned and shot upwards. Meanwhile, over 500 TNT get dispensed and funneled into a single spot to maximize the explosion force. Momentum is transferred onto the ender pearl in the perfect location and accelerates it to a speed of over 5,000 blocks per second. After a travel distance of about 10 kilometers and less than 10 seconds of waiting time, the player lands as accurate as a millimeter at the destination. A large-scale automatic mining system that stretches over 720 blocks. It is capable of mining over 140,000 blocks per hour and storing the items with minimal losses. Flying machines grab about 8,000 blocks per cycle and transport it to a TNT system. By trying to push blocks forwards, dangerous liquids are removed. After the machine has mined a slice, the whole system automatically moves forwards. The blocks are blown up by TNT and the items are collected in a water stream and deposited in a stationary storage with item sorting. and a 1000 by 1000 void perimeter to place Skyblock in.
Okay, now we've seen a lot of big farms and a lot of big contraptions, and some probably ask now, why do we automate? What are the benefits of doing all of this work for something you could grind out manually as well? And Myron and Nembon gonna give you 2 more points.
Yeah, okay. So one reason we automate is that it allows us to make projects on a much larger scale than usually, because you saw that we make really big farms, bigger than on other servers, and you can only do that if you automate a lot of the process involved in making these contraptions. So for example, if you want to dig out a 1000 by 1000 area, then you have to mine over 50 million blocks, and if you just do it stupidly with an iron pickaxe and just go mining, then it would take you over a year of playing the game straight, and nobody has that much time. And so if you want to do a project on that large of a scale, then you have to automate some process and think about how you're going to do this efficiently.
Yeah. Another reason for automation is to get more resources and instead of grinding them by hand. And one way to do it is to build farms. So you have everything available for you so that you don't need to worry about resources. The thing with farms, you have to make them working really well, and so you have to condition the environment that they're working in, and this is called the perimeter. And the simplest way to do it is just to remove all the blocks in the area. So here is one of our perimeters that we have on the SciCraft server, which wasn't dug by hand, but by automating the TNT. And if you look at the floor patterns at the wall, it's actually really nice random pattern, and we didn't place those blocks by hand, by flying machines as well. Why would we need that? Because we needed to automate production of sea lanterns, and that's why we built this 1 million drops per hour Guardian farm. Once the farm was built, you'd say that's fine, that works fine, but thanks to our sand automation, it was easy to take 500,000 sand blocks from our storage and just build a giant ziggurat around it, focus on the design and the execution rather than worry about resources. Automation removes the grind from survival and gives you all the time to do what you're really interested in, which is coming up with new ideas, designs, and just building.
Of course, we're all really good at redstoning and overall knowledge about the game, but with Minecraft being that gigantic of a game, we all tend to specialize in some certain aspects of the game, and therefore every one of us is going to make a few points what he specializes in.
Okay, so I mainly do research and try to figure out what is and isn't possible in one vanilla survival Minecraft. This does not mean that I play much survival Minecraft. I basically do everything except playing survival Minecraft. I play in creative mode, I read the source code of a game, or I talk to other people about game mechanics, or just spend time thinking about game mechanics and scribble stuff on paper. And I'm just trying to understand how exactly the game works, and once you understand how exactly the game works, you eventually discover certain bugs and unintended behaviors. For example, the most useful bug I discovered is a TNT duplication bug, which allows you to ignite a piece of TNT but also push it over with a piston at the same time so that you still have a TNT block. And with this you can dig out large areas if you just duplicate TNT on a very large scale and put it on flying machines. Another useful example of a bug I found is a bedrock breaking bug using headless pistons. But sometimes I also discover bugs which are pretty useless. For example, I discovered a bug where you could attach 6 piston heads to a single piston base, and it has no practical benefits, but we also have built that on the SciCraft server. Other than trying to understand the game and discovering bugs, I also sometimes make flying machines, where I also make proof of concept flying machines. For example, the first quarry, the first flying machine which automatically digs out an area, was built by me and Redstone Jazz. And another example of a proof of concept flying machine I made is the first flying bedrock breaker using headless pistons, which flies along and destroys a bedrock block at each spot using the headless piston bedrock breaking trick I found.
Yeah, lots of the absolutely mind-boggling stuff that you might see on other people's channel come from ideas and work of basically people like Myron. They are not really that vocal or like present outside of the core technical community, but big brains, big brains. So I started myself by designing and optimizing farms to automate resource gathering, which are still published to these days in form of tutorials. Then I realized to go to the next level, you have to understand the core mechanics very, very well. The problem with vanilla game is that vanilla game is really stringent in giving you the information that you need to do that. So what I basically did at the end was coming up with an additional project of mine, which is the carpet mod, that allows you to take full control over the game, from slowing it down so you can just go around the contraption, make sure that everything works just fine, or speeding it up so you can quickly iterate over different designs. This mod also fills the gap in the main game, adding features that we feel are missing, like for example auto crafting table, or for example pushable chests. All of those features, some of those features came from ideas and also full implementations of other members of the community. So at this point, I would say it's just a joint project of ours. One of the most interesting concepts I worked on was the permaloader, which was a contraption that allowed you to load any arbitrary area in the world and keep it loaded without the player being present. We used it, for example, to run a full-size nether quarry, where it ran for over a month, and without anybody there, we just came back, and then the whole thing was dug out. Most recently, led by this idea of having the full control of the game and full automation, in the creative process, I started working on Scarpet, which is a fully featured in-game programming language that you can use to code new tools, new behaviors, and all of it is in-game, preserving the vanilla feel. So it works a little bit like data packs. So if you have an itch to maybe do some programming in Minecraft, or you haven't programmed and you just want to learn how to code in your favorite game, that might be a good place to start.
I focus a lot on snapshots. So about once a year we get a big update, and that comes with a lot of snapshots where new features and mechanics are introduced. And yeah, first of all, those features and mechanics have to be figured out, because not everything is always disclosed in the patch notes. And of course, first steps for automation have to be taken with said features and mechanics. And of course, then a lot of existing mechanics get changed, break, get completely removed, or something new gets added that completely changes how we play the game. And only through community-driven testing, feedback, reporting bugs, and talking back to the developers, we can make sure that we together keep Minecraft as the best game ever. And my second specialization is TNT. So it sounds really simple in the beginning, but TNT is a super complex block. TNT allows you from, for example, compacting thousands of TNT into a single spot to shoot a projectile, as we saw in the highlight video, clearing gigantic large areas out, or even making 2D pixel art. TNT can do it all. And of course, there's two main ways of using TNT. One is the stationary classic dispenser, which has in Java the big downside that you cannot move it. But of course, as Myron, for example, discovered the TNT duping bug, we can use an arrangement of slime blocks, rails, and coral fans to actually dupe TNT on the fly, therefore making it movable. And with movable TNT, it opens up thousands of possibilities to use TNT in other creative ways, and I'm still, after 7 years, having great fun with it.
So I see myself mostly as an engineer within the game. I so mostly specialize in either redstone or flying machines, those moving block structures. And my focus is always on finding applications for the survival game. So some of the favorite projects I've been involved in or made on my own were the tree farms and the quarries. So the tree farms are giant contraptions where we de-leaf a tree with either pistons, or since the latest update we can use the Ravagers in order to get saplings back. And then the logs are pushed via pistons into either Wither Cage or a TNT blast chamber. The other favorite project are the so-called quarries. We've seen one in the highlight video, those giant flying mining machines that also store the items for you. And there's something like a quarry is really what I find so fascinating about this game. Is not something that ever was really intended in that form by the developers directly. It's something the players came up with themselves and just built it out of the simple components. It was also really nice to see the development of the quarries. So from first concept videos that were published, then the working prototypes, and then better and better quarries. And by now we're actually faster building a quarry than mining ourselves. The other thing I do as well is also I always try to come up with either new redstone circuits or new ways to make flying machines. One of the best discoveries I made was a while ago. I found a faster flying machine Also, it was already believed that you couldn't make a faster one, and that's something really what makes redstoning so interesting. Is there's always something you can do or improve upon. It's also really helpful. The game is still getting updated. Every major patch, and we get new mechanics and blocks. And sometimes we also find unexpected ways to use them. For example, recently the leaf mechanics were changed, and now we can transmit redstone signals via the leaves, which was quite interesting. Yeah, often I also get asked how you could get better with redstone. For me, the most important thing is really to know exactly how the components behave. For example, to know that water takes 5 ticks to flow, how many items a hopper can transfer per hour, or that a redstone lamp is on for 4 ticks longer than it's powered. Yeah, combining all of those components and the knowledge into something larger is what really I enjoy about the game.
Super interesting. For me, it's a bit different. I actually like to just play survival a lot. Went through a lot of different communities over the years, from PvP, public servers to modded. But the one series that always kept me going was my single-player survival series. But what's interesting about it is that all of those worlds turned out to be quite technical after a while. Because if you want to build something, you need resources. If you want resources, you want to farm for it. So about 1.5 years ago, when the Ender Pearl can technology that we saw in the highlight clips was developed, I was super interested in that. And I also tried to break it down, try to make it accessible to the broader public. On the SciCraft server itself, it's a bit different. I mostly build up the farms that are already created in creative mode. And yeah, I decorate them, connect them up, making them into one big project. For example, also in the highlight clips, we saw that a Nether Fortress farm. You could just build a farm somewhere in the Nether, have a super fast Wither Skeleton place and Pigman farm. But yeah, I decided to make it look good, add a nice surrounding to it with the ice and snow, and yeah, combining it all into one big project. Another thing I'm pretty proud of is the Piston Bolt network map that we built up for the new members of the server, because by now our rail network in the Nether is over 100 kilometers long, and sometimes it's really hard to find your way around it. So we placed down over 400,000 blocks, as you can see here in the video, in around 10 hours, and to be able to map that area and make a 5x5 pixel or map art out of it that we now can hang in our Nether hub, and people can look at it and find their way around. Another project we did on the SciCraft server that involved a lot of decoration was the Desert Mob farm that we also saw in the highlight clips, where we spent multiple weeks designing desert houses, building them up in creative, connecting them into village, and now we have a super nicely, actually spawn-proof desert village around the mob farm, so we don't lose any spawns inside the farm. So basically combining the aesthetics with the game mechanics that we know, to having one big project. Because having a farm is awesome, but the preparations and infrastructure also take a lot of time. That's what I'm for.
Okay, Panic already touched onto it. Preparations is half the work pretty much, and that's going to be the supporting infrastructure, lag prevention, transportation, and resource management.
Yeah, as I already said earlier, lag is always your arch enemy in technical Minecraft. If you want to go to the edge of what is possible, you basically need to know what limits you, and you have to find workarounds for it. So you take obvious measures like having as few entities or as few chunks loaded around you as possible, but also some quirky stuff like using observers and rails instead of redstone dust to transmit signals over larger distances. Another big lag causer that we had previous to the 1.15 snapshots were the Nether portals. Basically every time you went through a portal, the game froze for half a second. But now with the new snapshots coming out and game being updated, it's smooth as butter. You can use Nether portals now finally for mob farming in an easier way than before. Another thing we did on the SciCraft server was mining out the whole spawn chunks to make sure that we don't have any mobs there or any entities loaded all the time that would contribute to the lag of the server.
Yeah, okay. Another thing we have is we have a lot of farms, and these farms are often several thousand blocks apart because something like a witch farm or a guardian farm can't be built anywhere. It can only be built at very specific locations. And since we have so large distances between our farms, we need an efficient transportation system to get from one place to another. And what we mainly use are so-called piston bowls, which are contraptions where you have lots of pistons pushing minecarts over curved rails, and it's a lot faster than just having minecarts on powered rails or the usual way of transporting. So we have a very efficient transportation system, and another way of getting from one place to another is ender pearl cannons. So we have developed an ender pearl cannon which is capable of transporting you 80,000 blocks far, and we also have an ender pearl cannon on our server.
Yeah, since some of our projects sometimes need several millions of blocks, it's really important to also have a really efficient resource management. So most of the items that we produce are stored on-site at the farms, but we also have a huge central storage where we can deposit and store every single item in the game. So we just basically chuck everything we have left in our inventory in there, and it's getting sorted. In order to automate it even more, we also added a chunk loading system that was mostly invented by Gnemmon to make it reliable to it. So we can basically also leave the server while the storage is sorting everything. Yeah, sometimes it's also actually necessary to bring a lot of items from one place to another. In extreme cases, we also use a dropper network in the Nether for it. For example, for our witch farm project, where we connected 22 witch farms that are spread across 10,000 of blocks in the overworld to one central storage, we use a lot of droppers for that.
One of the elements of the supporting infrastructure that you didn't thought you can live without until you really tried are definitely mob switches. Those are vanilla solutions that let you prevent certain mobs to spawn in your world. So, for example, you can focus on building and don't worry that a creeper can basically snack on you and basically surprise you. Also one of the side effects of mob switches is typically they reduce number of entities around you, which also improves the lag situation, so you can direct the resources of the game where you really need them most.
Okay, and the next very important preparation step is actually mod development, and Gnemmon is our modding guy and is gonna tell you more about it.
Yeah. So you might be surprised that survival vanilla and modding has anything to do, but really, as we have said, lots of the technical researching really requires modding and going deep into the code, figuring out exactly what happens. Without that, you are only limited with your observations to what the game gives you. Most of the mods that we actually use nowadays using the new, really awesome and new modding platform, Fabric, that allows you to quickly dig into the code, make small changes and go back and basically run your really lightweight mods around this way. A lot of the technical gameplay revolves around some really crazy and quirky mechanics, and so that tend to be really volatile, so we have to be really careful when we develop those mods. One of really good things that happened recently was releasing by Mojang official mappings for the game code. This means that for the first time ever, both Mojang and all the modders, we can speak the same language. And it'll also speed up research in the vanilla game code, because we can also see what the Mojang teams sees as well. And that's really nice gesture from Mojang to release those mappings.
Okay, so this was a lot of talking and a lot of theory, but now we really want to show how an actual project on the SciCraft server comes to life, and we prepared a little highlight video for that.
So here's how a project on a SciCraft server would usually look like. So this time you want to make a super fast creeper farm in order to get lots of gunpowder that, together with sand, can be crafted into TNT. At the moment we actually use an exploit, so-called TNT duping, which is super useful because it allows us to get movable TNT, which we use for all kinds of machines, like for example this mining machine here. So we expect that this bug would be fixed at some point, and instead we would get movable dispensers like in Bedrock Edition, and therefore we would need a lot of TNT in order to make our machines work again. Now we need to start designing our mob farm, which is usually done in creative mode. We don't start from zero. You know, for example, already that if we place down trapdoors, we can prevent other mobs from spawning there. Now we need to follow the general mob farm guidelines, like for example try to kill the mobs as quickly as possible, because only 70 can exist at the same time. So by killing them quicker, we get more mobs spawning over time. Another thing we need to be aware of is to try to build the farm as low as possible in order to increase the spawning chances. Here's how an existing creeper farm concept would look like. As soon as a creeper spawns, we detect it with string, and push him over to be killed by fall damage very quickly. But this time we try to make an even faster farm. As soon as a creeper spawns, we just push him into another dimension. There's one problem with this: the portal would emit a high light level which prevents creeper spawning. We can get around this by using a water curtain. But now we have a new problem. A lot of zombie pigmen are actually spawning inside of those portals, filling up the mob cap. We need to do something like this in order to mitigate this issue. After weeks of redesigning, testing and dealing with all kinds of unforeseen issues, we finally have a fully built up version on our creative server. Now we just need to build this in survival. The first thing we need to do is now prepare the area around the mob farm and make a so-called perimeter, which basically just means remove all the blocks around the perimeter. So first we start by removing some liquids, so we're able to run the trench making machine over that. We need this trench for the big machine, the so-called World Eater. So this is a 500 wide array of TNT tubers that goes back and forth, and at the ends gets pushed down in order to also cover the lower layers. At some point we also need to deal with a lot of liquids coming from rivers or sometimes even ocean biomes, and therefore we add a sweeping module at the bottom as well, so that removes the blocks that can't be blown up by TNT. In total we're gonna remove about 15 million blocks in about 8 hours. Now we even need to go one step further and do the unthinkable. We need to remove a lot of bedrock. Here we can use the dragon egg trick, which basically means we drop a dragon egg in a lazy chunk. Of course we're gonna need a lot of dragon eggs for that, so that's why we made an automatic machine in order to get more. Unfortunately that trick doesn't work with the lowest layer of bedrock. In order to remove that we have to use the more tedious headless piston trick. Of course this would be super tedious for a large area, that's why we also made an automatic machine for that. So we drop TNT in order to get those headless pistons and then push in pistons from the side and trick those into retracting above the bedrock, which removes it. After we got the perfect void, it's now finally time to build the farm. Here we use Lightmedica, a blueprint program that displays which blocks need to be placed, so everybody knows how to build this really complex farm. The program also includes a materialist and a way to check for mistakes. In order to remove the obsidian without destroying the portals, we use a method called update suppression. So this is how we deal with the zombie pigmen issue. After a lot of time spent, now we can finally start the farm for the first time. We need to warm it up a little bit in order to keep the portal connections alive. This saves on lag. And here we can also see the pigmen falling down and creepers shot into the portals. And this here is what it makes it all worth it. This is just crazy. Over 100 creepers arriving per second in the Nether, where they drop to their death and the items are getting collected and later sent back to the overworld where they're stored in shulker boxes. We also currently work on a system to kill the creepers with looting, which should enable us to get about 1 million gunpowder per hour. Whatever the solution might be, we just need to make sure we don't end up in the same drop chute as all those creepers.
Okay, we've seen a very large and time-intensive project, and we quickly, one of us wants to share a point how to stay motivated in the game.
So for me, it's definitely being part of one big community, logging onto the server, getting feedback from the others, maybe also on Discord if you want to share something. But what's really helping for me is to share repetitive tasks. For example, for the creeper farm, we now spend multiple weeks building up that farm, and sometimes it's really cool to stream the progress, and you can also answer some questions to the viewers, or even share it on YouTube, as Mango is doing most of the time.
I don't have to do repetitive or monotonous tasks. I usually just work on problems which are so interesting to me that I don't have motivation problems. So usually I have to try to understand something that's conceptually unclear, and I just like working on these problems. I just find them fascinating enough that this keeps me motivated by itself. Yeah.
I actually get very easily demotivated, and that's why I switch between projects. So I never work full-time on just one thing. I, for example, work on a leaf farm, and the next day I prepare materials for example, the creeper farm. Or I even completely switch out of survival Minecraft and just do creative or snapshot testing. And yeah, that's how I stay motivated.
Yeah, for me it's not chasing the immediate satisfaction. Sometimes it's just what keeps me going, doing grindy, monotonous work is seeing the end result. So when you turn on a quarry for the very first time, to see everything working as it should, that's really beautiful. But I also really like playing the game a lot. So the movement and the block placing mechanics just feel right. So what about you, Lemon?
So like if all else fails and you have built absolutely everything in your world, unless it's like if it's even possible, you can always find a different solution to an existing problem. The fact that there's 20,000 different tutorials for the same farm on the internet doesn't mean that you cannot come up with something really cool, really new, something that uses something really quirky. Then also you won't cry if there's no updates for a couple of months, because you always can find something to do in a really new and unique way.
Okay. And lastly, we want to share a few tips and tricks how you can get started with automation and tech in Minecraft in your own world.
Now, after this panel, you might be wondering, how can I start out in a new technical Minecraft world, or how can I transfer my current world to an automated world myself? In our opinion, there are 4 crucial farms you should build as soon as you are able to, even if it's just a basic version that you can upgrade later. First of all, you should try to locate a village and set up a small villager breeder. This will save you the hassle of enchanting or fishing for your preferred enchantments. Your time is the most valuable resource you have in Minecraft. Secondly, an iron farm using some of those villagers. You need a lot of iron for all kinds of things like hoppers, pistons, anvils, and later for beacon bases. And after that, you can start with a witch farm for redstone and a slime farm for slime blocks. Those farms are so easy by now. After you got all of those 4 set up, you will probably notice what resource you constantly run out of, and it's time to look into automated wood farms, cobble farm, general mob farm, crop farms, or even a garden farm if you like. Minecraft has its limits, but there's a long way to go until you reach them.
And on that note, we want to thank everyone for watching our panel. We hope we maybe sparked some interest in some people for technical Minecraft. And yeah, if you have any questions, check out Twitter, Minecraft QA. That's it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
guys.